The idea of America as a cultural melting pot, advanced in the first decade of the 1900s, had lost most of its political and social capital by the end of the century. Conservative whites, with whom it had always been a hard sell, were still as anti-immigrant as ever, and fed-up minorities rejected assimilation in favor of hyphenation in a multicultural mosaic. But the melting pot wasn't such a terrible metaphor for what went on in American pop culture during that decade. It was surely on some kind of high boil when, in 1939, Frances Gumm, aka Judy Garland, a pig-tailed, corn-fed, button-nosed shiksa from Grand Rapids, appeared on movie screens singing Over the Rainbow, a tune written by Hyman Arluck, aka Harold Arlen, a cantor's son from Buffalo, with words by Erwin Hochberg, aka Yip Harburg, a Jew from the Lower East Side. Yip's parents were poor Yiddish-speaking Russian Jews who'd fled the pogroms in the late 1880s for the Lower East Side, where he was born in 1896. He was born Erwin Hochberg, and for obscure reasons would change it to Edgar Yipsel Harburg when he got married in 1923. The Hochbergs started out in a tiny tenement flat in the crowded, noisy pushcart district around Hester and Allen Streets, and when he was 7, moved up to 11th Street and Avenue C in today's East Village, then a war zone for Italian, Irish, and Jewish kids. His whole family worked in sweatshops. Yip and his sister slept on chairs pushed together. Yip's parents were Orthodox but lenient. On Saturdays, when his mother thought they were at temple, Yip and his dad used to sneak off to the venerable Thalia Theater on the Bowery to see Yiddish plays. When he could put together 25 cents, Yip would walk all the way up to the Palace Theater in Times Square to sit in the nosebleeds and watch vaudeville. As a kid, Yip haunted the then new public library on Tompkins Square, which for the centennial of his birth in 1996 dedicated a Yip Harburg reading room. He and Ira Gershwin began a lifelong friendship, Yip and Gersh, at Townsend Harris Hall, the high school division of City College. The middle-class Ira, whose parents bought him books, records, and magazines, shared the bounty with his pal. They wrote a column, Gargoyle Gargles, for the school paper. They went on to City College together. Ira quit after his junior year to concentrate on writing. Yip graduated in 1917. By then, he was politically radical, and because he didn't want to be drafted as America entered World War I, he shipped out to Uruguay and took a job with the Swift meatpacking firm there. When he came back to New York in 1920, he agreed to go in on an appliance business with a friend so he could support his aging parents. He did that through the decade, working on his verses on the side, encouraged by Ira, who was becoming a hit lyricist. By 1929, in his early 30s, Yip was ready to try writing full-time. Ira lent him a $500 grub stake and introduced him around to composers. And by 1932, Yip was a powerhouse on Broadway, writing more lyrics than anyone else that year. They included a song that became not just a hit, but maybe the most known anthem of the Depression. Tasked with writing 3 songs for a review called Americana on a tight schedule, he brought in composers Jay Gorney, born Abraham Jakob Gornetsky in Bialystok, Burton Lane, born Burton Levy, and Harold Arlen. They wrote 1 tune each. The Depression was at its height. All around the city, men stood in blocks-long bread lines. Inspired, Yip wrote the lyrics and Jay Gorney the tune for Brother, Can You Spare a Dime? Neither a cheery song in denial like We're in the Money, nor a sad sack whine, it came dangerously close to being a revolutionary march for the out of workers. Its imagery sharp and its politics clear. Al Jolson, Bing Crosby, and Rudy Valley all made hit records out of it. Yip wrote the lyrics for a very different song that year, April in Paris, for a Broadway review. The melody was by Vernon Duke, originally Vladimir Dukelsky, a white Russian of noble descent who had fled the Bolsheviks. As Yip later told it, Duke asked him for lyrics about Paris, his favorite city. Yip had never been. He went to a tour office, took some brochures home, and winged it, which no doubt explains why the imagery in the song, chestnuts in blossom, holiday tables under the trees, is so scant and vague. Arthur Freed, an associate producer at MGM, lobbied to have Yip and Harold Arlen do the songs for Wizard of Oz. When the filming was completed, Freed's bosses cut Over the Rainbow from it 3 times, arguing that it slowed down the picture right at the start, and Freed kept getting it reinserted. When the picture came out in 1939, Rainbow won the Best Song Oscar. That same year, Metro released the Marx Brothers at the Circus, with Groucho cavorting through what became one of his most famous songs, the Arlen Harburg Lydia the Tattooed Lady. Yip's work grew more openly political in the 1940s. He collaborated with the American Communist Party songwriter Earl Robinson, who'd written the Union anthem, The Ballad of Joe Hill. In the depths of World War II, Yip and Robinson wrote Free and Equal Blues, denouncing racism in the military. He and Freed produced the MGM wartime musical Meet the People, about shipyard workers who clash with show business snobs when they put on a patriotic review. The 1947 Finian's Rainbow, which Yip co-wrote with Fred Sadie, is a kind of lefty Little Abner, in which the poor black and white sharecroppers of Mississauga team up with the magical realist Irishman and his leprechaun against racist cops and politicians. They also work together on the musical Jamaica, about American imperialism in the Caribbean, which featured the Broadway debut of Lena Horne. In 1948, Yip stumped for the pacifist anti-Cold War Henry Wallace, the presidential candidate of the new Progressive Party. Yip wrote a campaign song for him, as well as a speech delivered by Paul Robeson. Wallace got roughly 2% of the popular vote. Yip's politics got him blacklisted in Hollywood in 1950. That went on through the decade, and he found little work. Finally, in 1968, he and Sadie wrote the screenplay for the film adaptation of Finian's Rainbow, directed by Francis Ford Coppola. After that, Yip worked right up to the end. In 1981, just short of his 85th birthday, he had a fatal heart attack while driving on Sunset Boulevard to a story conference about a proposed film.